Tutankhamun's death and burial. Mysterious reasons. Stocking the tomb. Part 3. Maria Rosa Boas-Jane proposes that there is a connection between the contents of the niches and the 3 empty wine amphoras found in the burial chamber. State-of-the-art analysis of the residue showed that the amphoras once contained 3 different types of wine, like the unopened amphoras in the annex, according to their labels. Jane interprets spells from the Book of the Dead to propose that the red wine in the amphora at the west wall aided Tutankhamun's transfiguration as Osiris-Ra, and the white wine contained in the amphora at the east wall his transfiguration as Ra-Harakti, while the Price-Seder wine in the amphora at the south wall helped him with the most difficult step in his transformation, his nocturnal trip through the southern sky. But who drank this wine ensuring Tutankhamun's transformations? Jane brings her interpretation of the amphora's contents to bear on what she believes to be a problem posed by the figures in the niches. Their orientation does not correspond to the stipulations in the Book of the Dead. In fact, only a single figure was oriented correctly, and, furthermore, there was an extra figure of Osiris, and no text on the brick supporting the figure of Anubis. Jane argues that these discrepancies resulted from an intention to enhance an Osirian protection ritual following the new beliefs at the end of the Amarna period. Jane does not claim to be either the only person or the first to identify Osirian references in the burial of Tutankhamun. 3 decades ago, Alex Wilkinson published 2 articles on this theme. Ikram, too, suggests that perhaps the anomalies she recognizes in the king's mummified cation were a literal transformation of his body into Osiris, speculating that at this delicate historical/religious time, it was thought that the usual modes for the transformation were not sufficient, and so the priest embalmers prepared the body in such a way so as to literally emphasize the divinity of the king and his identification with Osiris. I remain leery of this and similar theories of my colleagues, who would discover a religious meaning behind what they consider irregularities in burials in general, not just in Tutankhamun's case. As Howard Carter observed, tradition holds that in burial customs, each article belonging to the tomb equipment has its prescribed place in the tomb. However, experience has shown that no matter how true the governing conventions may be, seldom have they been strictly carried out. Either the want of forethought with regard to requisite space, or the want of system, when placing the elaborate paraphernalia in the tomb-chambers, overcame tradition. We have never found any strict order, we have found only approximate order. 79. I am convinced that the many instances of carelessness and poor planning observable in Tutankhamun's burial are not at all exceptional, but the rule. I suspect that while not necessarily intentionally skimping on ritual, the Egyptians were on the whole nevertheless eager to be over and done with the burial of their kings during the New Kingdom, if not throughout pharaonic history. Final activities. With the doorway to the burial chamber walled up and sealed, the remainder of the funerary equipment could be brought into the tomb and the completion of the stocking undertaken in earnest. I imagine this process was hurried. The end was finally in sight of a process which must have already occupied some days, if not considerably longer. The animal biers were lined up against the far wall of the antechamber, and various pieces of furniture placed on top of and under them, along with prepared meat and fowl in purpose-made whitewashed boxes. The placement of the guardian statues of the king, facing each other at either end of the north wall, made no secret of the fact that the burial chamber lay beyond. Simultaneously, boxes and more pieces of furniture were passed hand to hand down the stairs and corridor into the tomb, which will have resulted in damage to some items while providing the opportunity for pilfering. The gilded chariots were probably the last items to be brought into the tomb, perhaps as an afterthought. They were deposited just inside and to the left of the antechamber's entrance. Then masons were called in to block that doorway. The corridor was filled with rubble, and a final wall was built up to block the entrance at the bottom of the steps descending from the floor of the Valley of the Kings. When the necropolis officials had pressed their seals into the plaster smeared on that wall, and the last ships had topped up the stairwell, the entrance to the tomb would have been indistinguishable from its surroundings. Tutankhamun was consigned to the world of the dead and buried.